everyone, and welcome to episode 2 of Fetishes and Fantasy, Webisodes, I guess. I mentioned last time I was going to talk a little bit about freedom and the concept of freedom, but I think before we actually get into any really clearly defined topics, we should probably continue for at least one more episode on something a little bit more abstract, like, you know, putting a bit of a groundwork down for how I'm going to talk about subjects like freedom and whatnot. So today I want to talk a little bit about what's known as the big other, or if you're a fan of Zizek, which I am, or Lacan, which he is, or intersubjectivity, which is probably a less kind of ominous way to get into the whole concept of it. At least providing some kind of a platform or basis upon which to start a discussion about things like freedom or cultural relativity, which I'll probably hit on. So today let's get into it. Let's get into some intersubjectivity and finding the big other. What do we talk about when we're talking about intersubjectivity? Or the big other? Well, intersubjectivity is basically the interaction of subjectivity, or the fact that we live in a subjective universe, and we need some kind of level upon which our subjectivities can interact and touch each other. I live in Montreal, and for the past couple of weeks it's been brutally cold. Cold is a good way to actually kind of discuss the concept of intersubjectivity, in the sense that I have a personal, subjective idea of what it means to be cold and what cold is. Now, you or someone else will have a different understanding about what cold means subjectively. So, like, let's say at minus 15, I'm freezing, but I might have a warm-blooded friend out there who at minus 15 they're pretty comfortable. They don't need the same kind of jacket I do. But we can both agree that it is in some way or shape cold. That it is some kind of representation of the concept of cold. And intersubjectivity offers something that can be confused as objectivity, where there is like some kind of grand concept out in the world that is cold, that cold is definable, that cold is universally recognizable as something. And I'm going to get into that in a sec, but for now let's just say that we can agree on cold being, let's say, not hot. Well, that's the basis upon which our subjective interpretations of the world are shareable and exchangeable. It is that I say cold, they understand what I mean in a general way, and then we start adding our subjective interpretations into it. We internalize it differently. So now, what does this have to do with the big other? Well, the big other kind of transcends this idea of the interactive of the subjective, in the sense that, like, it represents what can't really be identified with. Now, I guess in like more like relaxed terms, we like to think about things like God. God would be a big other. Like, we find that it's hard to, at least through the kind of the history of theosophy or theological philosophy, to put thoughts in God's head that reflect our thoughts. When in reality, God, and this is the reality of intersubjectivity and the big other as a concept, where these things actually represent, like the symbolic, represent ideals or concepts that we hope to interact with. Now that we've got some kind of a basis for intersubjective and the big other and all this stuff, so some kind of a working term we can run with, I just want to say that it's heavily culturally relative. I mean, the intersubjective, or the meanings given by symbols, are not always universally translatable across culture, which again stems from the idea that I have, or that I've learned from many other people, that there are no universals, and intersubjectivity helps create the idea of objectivity, like I've said, giving us the kind of the notion that there are universals. But so let's just say one thing about intersubjectivity and how it relates to ideology is I find that Culture for me is the basis from which all intersubjective or subjectivized meaning comes from. So it's like looking at the sun being the cultural meaning, or the cultural meaning given to symbols. When you put on a pair of sunglasses, that would be like ideology. It provides a filter between you and meaning. And that filter doesn't always clearly illustrate the meaning that is originally there. It might alter it, might change its color, it might change the way it even kind of looks. And that's something we'll build on and get into a bit more as we go on with this. So for now, I just want to say thank you so much for hanging out again, and have a great day.